Hello, and welcome to the concepts for Unit 1. I've provided this document here because it's a cheat sheet of sorts. It gives you all of the concepts that we'll be using throughout this first unit. Uh, uh, when it comes to building arguments, when you guys are building your op-eds, and also when it comes to analyzing arguments or breaking them down. Right? Here are the sorts of things that we'll be looking for. And I want to talk briefly about these concepts, but I think the best way of doing this is to see the concepts in action. And so to do that, I want to return to this document. And this is the document that I provided that gives you examples of what higher ed institutions are looking for when it comes to students' critical thinking and argument. And this first example is actually from the graduate school exam. And what I find interesting about this example here is that, number one, they want us to think negatively about skateboarders. Now, really, what I find interesting is that this example is asking us to really think logically about the argument that's being made. Right? They say here, write a response in which you discuss what questions would need to be answered in order to decide whether the recommendation is likely to have the predicted result. And so this thinking here takes us to this row, right? To this real kind of logic and reasoning way of looking at an argument. And so they want us to think about the overall argument, about the claims or the premises that are being made, about the evidence that's being brought in, about the assumptions that are being made. And so if we look at a brief example here, we can see some of the gaps in the logic. So for example, it says, many Central Plaza store owners believe that the decrease in their business is due to the number of skateboard users in the plaza. Well, here is a claim that's being made, and if we see a claim, then the expectation is that it will be followed by evidence. And yet, if we look right here, and we look at this next sentence, there's also been a dramatic increase. We can see that there isn't evidence that's being brought in order to support that claim. So there's an inconsistency in the logical strength of the argument that's being made. Note, right, that all of our thinking comes from this row, right? We're seeing how the lack of evidence means that the claim isn't as strong as it should be. That sort of thinking is different than the sort of thinking that's being asked for in this second example. Let's take a look at just this first sentence. I am the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. Right? This excerpt is from Obama's speech on race. Well, this first sentence here is a fact, and yet we're not really being asked to look at the logic of this piece. Instead, right, in this example, they want us to look at the persuasive strategies. And so when we look at this sentence here, we can think more in terms of all of this stuff that plays into the rhetorical effectiveness. We can think about the character of the speaker. We can think about the emotions. We can think about the myths or the narratives or the values and beliefs of the culture. Because if we start to apply these concepts, we can see how this text is persuasive, and yet the persuasion may not rest solely on the logic. Right? It may rest on some of these other rhetorical appeals. And so this first sentence, I'm the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas, may get us to think about specific values and beliefs in the culture and how Obama is playing on these specific values and beliefs. Or maybe that first sentence helps Obama build a certain character that's going to appeal to a specific audience. And so note that we're still looking at persuasion, just as we were looking at persuasion and argument up here, except now we're looking at how the emotions are involved. Now we're looking at how the character of the writer or the speaker is involved. Now we're looking at how there are certain cultural narratives that are embedded in this that are being played on by the speaker. And so that's what all of these concepts are getting at here. And so I ask you to take a little bit of time and read over this cheat sheet. And if you need more details, I've provided a link that provides more details. But this is the sort of stuff that we'll be doing in this first unit. We'll be examining how arguments work logically, but we'll also be examining how arguments work rhetorically, how they use other rhetorical appeals in order to persuade the audience. Hope this helps.